everybody. Kevin Weiss from bodyperformance.net, and this is week 6 of the bench press program. That puts us about 9 weeks out from the competition in Kamloops. And this was an interesting week. Had a few little developments that are going to change how the program is run in the next few weeks, change the schedule a little bit. And that's the way the programs go. So I'm not going to say I'm glad that this happened, but I'm going to say that it really shows that you don't often get a program where you just get to punch in numbers and run along week to week and everything just goes perfectly. So your program is a template, and this type of stuff really shows that you have to make adjustments when something doesn't go as planned, which as far as I know, it's very rarely does a program run flawlessly. So let's get right to it. On June 20th, it was my first workout of the program or of the week, and it was supposed to be one of the heaviest and most volume workouts that I had in the whole block. So I started with pause bench press with Pinkies on the rings. I did a heavy single, 150 kilos for one, and then my work sets were to be 137.5 for 8 sets of 5 reps. And that would have put the volume just for that exercise over 5,000 kilograms. But unfortunately, on my 8th set, my first rep on the way down, I felt a little twinge in my pec. Knew things were not good when that happened, so I re-racked it. Did a little bit of self-assessment on myself at that time and realized it was nothing too major, but major enough that I decided to shut the workout down for that day. Made an appointment to see my guy the next day and see what he thought about it. So I wasn't very happy about it, but that's the way that the day went. So all you can do is just take what you get. The next day, I saw my therapist, and he said, yeah, it's just a minor strain. He wanted me to continue to do movement with the pec without excessively stretching it. He did some Graston technique on it, and that made it feel better almost right away, or better than it did. But I could also tell that just from him doing that, it was going to be sore just from the actual technique itself. So I wasn't expecting to set the world on fire the next couple days, but he did say, don't just completely rest it. Get some blood going in there. Just don't overly stretch it. So on the 22nd, I didn't really do anything for the pec itself. I did all accessory stuff, various rows, pull downs, delt flies, and dumbbell curls. Then the next day, the 23rd, that's when I tried to bench again, and I knew it was going to be, or I followed his advice and didn't go with the wider grip for one thing, because he said keep your grip in a little bit more, takes a little bit of stress off the pec, just for probably a week or two. So I went pause bench presses with the Pinkies on the rings again. I dropped down to 100 kilos for 5 sets of 4 reps. So that wasn't overly hard. I could feel that the pec was tender, but I also could feel that it was going to be fine. So that was only 2,000 kilograms of volume on that exercise. Then the incline press didn't really bother it at all, but I still took it easy. I basically decided after the Monday workout that this week was going to be an unplanned deload week. It was actually supposed to be the next week that I was going to deload because I'm going to be away for a few days, but hey, you don't always get what you want. So take what the program gives you. I did 84 kilos for 3 sets of 5 for the incline press, and then military press, which didn't bother it at all, but I deloaded that as well a little bit, mostly with volume. I still went 60 kilos for 5 reps, 3 sets. Moving on to the next day, I didn't do any specific bench press work again. I did some minor push-up type work and stuff like that to get a little bit of blood in there, but I just did some high bar squats, worked up to a set with 140 kilos for 5, did some dumbbell curls, some press downs, and my regular rear cable flies, which I've been doing a lot of lately to keep my shoulders feeling good. So this is a pretty uneventful week as far as the training actually goes, and it was a totally unexpected week as far as the training goes, but that's the way training goes. So when you look at the daily volume in kilograms, you can see it's pretty obvious where it fell off after week 5. Day 1, the volume was climbing up pretty quick, or day 1 in week 6, the volume was climbing up reasonably quickly and was going to be a pretty high volume day, but after the incident, that pretty much put the end to that. So looking at the average weekly intensity, no surprise there. Week 6 very low in the average week because of missing the 3rd day because I was away anyways, and also only really doing half a workout on day 1 and probably a half intensity, half volume workout on day 2 as well. So you could see the weekly intensity was climbing week 3, 4, 5, and it was probably going to be just a shade higher in week 6, but that was not to be. So moving on to the average daily intensity. Now, because even though my volume was low on the day that I hurt myself, the average intensity that I was actually using for the minimal amount of sets that I actually did was quite high. You can see it's actually the highest day of the whole block. And then day 2, you can see, is the lowest day of the whole block, and that was because that was basically a half intensity type day. So that brought the average daily intensity over the whole block down slightly more than it would have been, but you'll see in the next few weeks as I start adjusting into a strength phase, and the intensity is going to be slowly climbing and the volume is going to be slightly cut back down, that average daily intensity is going to fluctuate a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see as we switch blocks here in the next few weeks. Total weekly pressing related volume. Look at week 6. Obviously there wasn't a lot of volume in there, so had that been a planned deload week, that probably would have had actually even more volume than it actually ended up having because of the injury. I wouldn't have had to cut back as much as I actually did, but that's the way it goes. So as you can see, the volume was climbing in the first 3 weeks, had a little dip in week 4, climbed back up in week 5, and then was probably going to have a very, very slight increase in volume in week 6, but instead had a big decrease. So as you'll see next week, things are going to start changing. So it's going to be interesting. I hope that you guys will follow along, because as we switch blocks, the graphs are going to actually become a little bit more meaningful, because you'll see how the volume and intensity have to work with or against each other, whichever way you want to actually look at it, where you can't always just keep your volume and your intensity high and just keep going with that. That's not going to work. So as I switch into the strength block, you'll see how the volume has to be manipulated and how the intensity has to be manipulated. So that's pretty much all I got to say for this week. Stay tuned and check back for week 7. You'll see how I adjusted to this little setback and how the program had to be tweaked to keep going in the right direction. Talk to you again real soon. It's Kevin Weiss, bodyperformance.net. Have a good one.